Hi everyone, I'm Megan, and you've made it to Beguiled by Books, a community of book lovers and word nerds. Today I'm sharing my September 2025 reading wrap up. Let's get started. September was kind of a strange month. Right smack dab in the middle of the month, the hubby and I headed off to Las Vegas to meet my folks out there and spend a little bit of time hanging out with the family, as well as going to clubs and going to restaurants and shows and just enjoying the Las Vegas life for a couple of days. Actually, it was about 5 days. We had a great time, but that severely messed up my reading plan because I was so excited to read prior to the trip. And then we went, I didn't read hardly at all. And we got back, and I've just kind of been in a weird reading slump ever since we got back. So hopefully, I can get my groove and find some books that I really want to read again. September was a lot of nonfiction, and I think I'm kind of going to take a break from nonfiction for a while. It's been a lot, but let's get into the reading recap. Just as September was taking off, I read the book Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross, which I got as an ARC. And I had read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross a year and a half ago or something like that, a year ago. And it got a lot of hype. A lot of people loved it, said it was the next Fourth Wing. Respectfully, I disagree wholeheartedly. And I was excited to see what Wild Reverence could be like. And just wasn't for me. I think I've decided that I'm not a necessarily Rebecca Ross reader. Totally fair. That's great for me, great for other readers as well. It's a little too poetic for me, which I tend to really love lyrically written novels and poetic type prose. But this was just, it felt like everything was cloaked in layers and metaphor, and I just, my quasi neurodivergent brain just couldn't handle it. It's just not for me. And it was, again, beautifully written, like all Rebecca Ross's work is. It's gorgeous. The imagery is very evocative, but I just didn't connect to anything, so it fell flat, unfortunately. Another book I read right at the beginning of September is a book called Between Tides by Angel Corey. So I picked this book up at Buxton Village Books down in the Cape Hatteras area of North Carolina last year when I was on a trip. I'm from the area, so we visit frequently, and I always try and stop at bookstores wherever we go. And I actually happen to know Angel Corey. I didn't know she had written a book, but my parents are friends with her from a long time ago, and I know her from the community. She's big in the arts community in Deer County, North Carolina, and I was super excited to see this book and to read it. It takes place partly in the Hatteras area and partly in the Cape Cod area. And it was a really interesting kind of dual timeline story about a man who leaves his wife in New England, goes to Cape Hatteras, starts another life, technically never divorces his first wife, and has a second family. So it's kind of family dynamics, drama, children involved, looking back at your life as an older person. It was really well done, very poetic, very compelling. I really liked it. So it was a fascinating book, and I'm always super happy to support authors that I know, local authors to North Carolina, and this was a great book. So if you have a chance, check it out. In September, I read a book that I've had on my Kindle for a while, which is an ARC, and it is Vagabond by Tim Curry. So, for those of you who don't know, I adore Tim Curry. I watched Rocky Horror Picture Show when I was a very, very young child, probably too young, but hey, we all have movies we saw younger than we probably should have. But Rocky Horror was very formative in my upbringing. I still watch it every year around this time, around Halloween. And Tim Curry is just, I've always been fascinated by the roles he's taken. He seems like a genuinely good human, really interesting person. And so when I saw he had a memoir, I jumped at the chance to read it. And I'm so grateful to the publishers for giving me a copy because I loved Tim Curry's memoir, Vagabond. Like I love Tim Curry so much. My husband got me a meet and greet with him in 2019 when he came to the Raleigh area for a comic book convention. And I just had the best 90 seconds with Tim Curry. And I adore the man. He's amazing. Definitely one of my, top three dinner guests in that fun little scenario that we all ask each other. Love Tim Curry. Vagabond's amazing. It's a wonderful reflection on his life, and it's in true Tim Curry form. Tim Curry talks about everything in this book and throughout his entire career, everything from Rocky Horror and getting his start, and meeting the Queen and the royal family after they have seen Rocky Horror. He talks about working with legends like Tom Cruise and just so many different experiences that he has. He does talk a little bit about the stroke that he suffered in 2012 and how that has changed how he works, but hasn't stopped him working. And it's just a beautiful, funny, uplifting memoir from a celebrity who's like low key incredible and just kind of pops up in all these great places and just delights with his performance every single time. I can't say a bad word against Tim Curry, and everyone should read this if you're even slightly a Tim Curry fan. It's a great book. I got a book from the library called Apple in China. Now, this book was something one of my friends recommended. Now, I actually haven't spoken to this friend in like 2 years. He came out of the woodwork and he was like, "Hey, I read this book, Apple in China. You should go read it." So, thank you for that lovely recommendation. But what's interesting about this book is it's fairly new, came out in 2025, but Apple in China is really all about Apple the company and their presence over the years in China and how that has really changed not just the Chinese economy, but the global economy and the US economy, which obviously is part of the global economy, but you know what I'm trying to say. So it's a really interesting look on this one company and its influence and the ripple effects Apple has everywhere it goes. And specifically, it talks about what the future looks like. So we know things like Foxconn, being manufacturers of phones in China. We know a little bit about Huawei. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, and how they've knocked off Apple, for lack of a better phrase. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but I don't have a better phrasing for it, and how that shift has influenced a lot of other policy decisions in China, outside of China, how Apple is starting to have phones manufactured in other locations, components manufactured in other locations, and what the future can look like when just one or a few companies have an outsized influence on entire country economies and GDPs. It's a really fascinating book. It's really nerdy on economics, public policy, global policy, all these types of things. So if that's not your speed, just fair warning, it's pretty heavy into that, but it's a fascinating look. And the author is actually one of the people who reported on Apple specifically, I think for Forbes or the Financial Times or both publications for a long time. So really reputable source, and this is a compilation of all of those years of investigation, understanding, that type of thing. Fascinating book if you like economics and policy and that type of thing. It's a really good one. In September, the book The Hallmarked Man came out, and The Hallmarked Man is the eighth book in the Cormoran Strike series by Robert Galbraith. And Robert Galbraith is the pseudonym for J.K. Rowling and her latest series, the Cormoran Strike series. Now, I know J.K. is not the most popular figure in the world for understandable reasons, and it is a difficult position to be in, to be a reader, to love books, to love reading, and to not necessarily love the author. That's a really tough one because it's like, do you enjoy the book and just enjoy the book and let a book be a book? Or do you let that author's beliefs and things you maybe disagree with influence your ability to enjoy their work? That's for every reader to decide, and I certainly will never judge any reader who wants to read whatever they want. That's the beautiful thing about reading, and all books should be out there. You should read widely and broadly, separate the author from the work as best you can if it's for enjoyment. Really interesting situation to be in. From a reader's perspective, The Hallmark Man being the eighth book in a 10-book series, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. This was the most stepping stone book of all of them so far. I felt like the case was like kind of convoluted. Um, the premise is a private investigator team looking into cases. So the case was a little convoluted, fell a little flat for me. I didn't really connect to the case, to the mystery. It was more about the two main partners, Cormoran Strike and Robin Ellicott, and what they're going through. But very much felt like a stepping stone book, and the book absolutely ended on a cliffhanger. So I will eagerly anticipate book nine while separating that book and the series from the author. So we'll see how it goes, but it's a tricky situation to really get excited about a book, but also feel that guilt, I guess, that guilt, that like unease within you when you know what you know. And therein is the problem with social media and people being online so much. You know too much about people sometimes. So that's a whole separate video. But anyway, Hallmark Man, enjoyable. The Cormoran Strike series is very enjoyable. If you like a good mystery and character development series, it's a good one. I got my hands on a copy of Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid in September, and my friend recommended this to me, so thank you. And it was a good one. I have tried to read other Taylor Jenkins Reid books before, and they fell flat. A lot of people were like, "Oh, the twist," and unfortunately, I guessed the twist pretty early on, so it just wasn't for me, and that's totally fine. But Atmosphere was more of a love story. And it was really beautiful. It's about a woman in the 80s who is one of the first cohorts of NASA astronauts, NASA female astronauts. And it's about that journey of being a woman in a male-dominated role, having allies, having people who are against you just because you're a woman, and finding your people and finding your person in an unexpected place, and also kind of self-discovery. It was really beautifully done. It read really quickly. I finished it super fast. I think I actually read it in an entire day. I think I just sat down and read it in about 6 hours. And it was so sweet and wholesome. And I was crying at the end. And my husband, bless him, was so worried. He thought something was terribly wrong. And I just told him that, the book was beautiful and it was great. And he's pretty used to that by now. So it was really sweet. Definitely elicited more than a handful of tears for me. It was really beautiful. I have had an ARC for far too long, and I finally had the nudge to read it because the publication date is so soon, and that is Witches of Dubious Origin. I didn't really know what I was getting into when I read it, and it's about a woman who receives basically a grimoire after her mother's passing, and the grimoire is locked. She has to take it to a specialty place in New York City and kind of leave her comforting bubble in New England and go to the big city, and chaos ensues. I didn't connect with the book, unfortunately. The magic system was actually pretty good. I did enjoy the magic system, but there was just too many people, too many things. It didn't hit for me, unfortunately. I wish the book all the success in the world, but it just wasn't. I wasn't the right reader for the book. But it seems like it would be really fun and kind of like a cozy magic book. Not a fantasy, but just like cozy book with magic in it. I read the book Dopamine Nation, which I have been meaning to read for a long time. And Dopamine Nation is about how so many of us in the modern world are addicted to something. So, whether it's an actual serious kind of medical addiction like alcohol or gambling or sex or something like that, or something more innocuous, and I use that word very loosely, like social media or shopping or things like that, things that sneak up on you as a way of getting that dopamine. What I liked about Dopamine Nation is the neuroscientific approach to why we engage in these behaviors and these repetitive behaviors, and why we can't seem to really get enough, why we keep buying crap on Amazon, why we keep eating food that we know we shouldn't eat, whatever our vices are, we keep doing them because in our brains, we're looking for that dopamine chemical. So the more we get, the more we need. It is pretty basic with what we know in terms of, big addictions like alcohol and gambling and things like that. The more you do, the more you need, and it's just constant more, more, more. What I had hoped I would have gotten out of this book was how to fix it, how to break those cycles, how to get out of that dopamine craving. And there was a short chapter smack dab in the middle of the book, and it was basically like, do a 4-week dopamine fast and just stop doing the thing that is causing the problem in your life, as long as you're not going to medically hurt yourself. If you're addicted to some substance, you need to withdraw and go through a medical professional. Full disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. You need to seek help for yourself if you feel you are addicted to something or have those inklings. But the book did have that one short chapter about a 4-week dopamine fast. And that was it. And what I didn't love about the book, unfortunately, is it kind of went down a path of really promoting AA and like the 12-step program for any type of addiction. And I'm not saying that doesn't work, but it got really preachy at the end, like uncomfortably preachy. So I kind of felt bait and switched, I think, when I was reading it because I was really excited to learn. I was learning. I was looking for solutions, and then I felt like I was getting proselytized to, which is very icky for me in the nonfiction space. I'm looking for facts, I'm looking for learning, I'm looking for as much of an unbiased take as possible. And I didn't feel like I got that in Dopamine Nation. So, that said, if you're looking for a book that is about breaking bad habits, breaking bad cycles, trying to get off that dopamine train, I highly recommend Michael Easter's Scarcity Brain. I think that's a much more cohesive book and really dives into tactics as well as the neuroscientific things going on behind the scenes with dopamine and cravings and things like that. Spoiler, you can get the full summary of Scarcity Brain by Michael Easter along with worksheets in my course, The Growth Library, which you can use the description or the pinned comment below and sign up and take that course. At the end of September, I read a book that my husband was reading and he was eagerly recommending. It's called The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And I had seen this on Instagram a couple years ago, but I didn't know there was a book. The book actually came out in 2025, but it is called The Let Them Theory. And the premise is essentially like, let them. It's really straightforward. Let people do whatever they're going to do so that you can respond accordingly. It's a really modern take on Stoic philosophy, which y'all know I'm a big fan of Stoicism and Ryan Holiday, not this new weird perversion crap that's going on, but Ryan Holiday and his take on Stoicism is what I'm a fan of, which really the ultimate goal is you can only control your thoughts and what you do. That's all you can control. You can't control what happens to you. You can't control anybody else in the world. And the more you try, the crazier you're going to drive yourself. So the let them theory is another way of saying that in a more conversational way, I would say. Really great, highly recommend it. Interesting point. I read the ebook. My husband listened to the audiobook. The audiobook has a lot more stuff in it than the ebook. I finished the ebook in a day. Took my hubby a couple days to finish the audiobook because it was about twice as long. And the reason for that is Mel Robbins, the author, has a podcast. She's already super used to being recorded, talking into a microphone, and having these types of conversations. So the audiobook is actually chock full of tangents and diversions from the main material that continue to illustrate those examples. So I am actually going to go back and listen to the audio version and see other stuff that I missed by not listening to the audiobook. So if you do have the option of choosing, even if you're not an audiobook listener, I would probably pick the audiobook because there's more information in there and more illustrative examples. So I hope that helps if you decide to read The Let Them Theory. I finished September with a book called The Deepest Well. And this book I've seen at my local bookstore. I actually had an e-copy of it for a while before my bookstore even opened up. And I finally got around to reading it. And it's all about kind of that childhood trauma that we experience and trying to heal childhood trauma. And it was really cool because it was written by an actual doctor who's done a lot of work in low income communities, specifically in I think it's Bayview area of the San Francisco area on the West Coast, and talks about ways we can better understand how childhood trauma affects adulthood and kids in childhood still growing up, but specifically how it can affect adults and how generational trauma really is truly passed down. Really interesting. Made me very grateful that I don't have any or a lot of those kind of scores the author talks about for assessing your childhood trauma score to see how it affects your life. But I think it's a really important book for a lot of people to read, especially parents, because now we know even small things can affect kids kind of negatively, and maybe kids are less resilient than we thought they were. And there needs to be a lot of protection for those children, especially in those early developmental years, so they can become resilient. They don't just pop out of the womb resilient. We have to help them get that resilience in them. And this book talks a lot about that, and it's really well done, and it's pretty short. It's very actionable, and I really like that. I read about 10 books in September, not as many as I was hoping. I'm hoping I can get a few more books read. I'm still trying to reach my 100 books in 2025 goal, so I've got a little ways to go in October, November, and December, and those months are packed for me with travel. I would love to know what you read in September. What are you hoping to read before the end of the year? Tell me some of your favorite books that you've been reading lately. I read and respond to every single comment, so please drop me a comment. Go sign up for the Growth Library, which is a book-based blueprint to wisdom and well-being, a course that takes 15 nonfiction books, distills them down into its essence, and gives you actionable tools to apply the knowledge from those books to your daily life so you can level up in health, wealth, and wisdom. Sign up through the link in the description or the pinned comment below. Please like this video if you found a book that you are interested in reading, or if an opinion of mine maybe helped you make a choice on a book. I always appreciate that. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, and hit that notification bell so that you get updates whenever new videos come out. Until next time, I hope you have an amazing day.